have nothing human. No home, no name, but I can heal if you let me stay." The storm had been raging for hours. Wind screamed across the barren land, carrying dust and broken pieces of metal from the old ruins. Daniel sat inside his small shelter, listening to the endless roar. His home was nothing more than a patched-up bunker, its walls of steel and stone barely holding against the storm. He had lived alone for months. Maybe years' time was easy to forget when every day felt the same. Fix the roof, hunt for food. Stay alive, repeat. That night, however, something felt different. Daniel was repairing the fire when he heard it, the sound of footsteps. Slow, careful, not the crash of debris or the scratching of wild animals. These were deliberate steps, soft against the mud outside his door. His hand moved to the knife on his belt. Out here, visitors rarely meant anything good. The steps stopped. Silence returned, broken only by the storm. Daniel rose, his muscles tense, and moved toward the heavy steel door. He pressed his ear against it. Nothing. For a moment he thought he had imagined it, another trick of loneliness. But then 3 quiet knocks, not strong knocks, weak, almost desperate. Daniel opened the door only a crack, and the storm immediately pushed against it. Through the gap he saw her. A figure stood in the rain. Thin, trembling, clothes torn, and dripping wet. Her skin was pale, glowing faintly under the storm's lightning. Her eyes, large, almost too large, watched him silently. She was not human. Daniel knew that instantly. He had seen aliens before, in the wars, in the colonies. But never one standing alone in the storm, carrying nothing but a small metal pan. For a long moment, they just stared at each other. Daniel's grip on his knife tightened. He waited for her to speak, to explain, to threaten. But her lips barely moved as she whispered, "I don't talk much human, but I can cook." The words were broken, heavy with an accent, but clear enough to understand. Daniel blinked, unsure if he had heard right. Out of all the things she could have said, out of all the danger she might bring, this was what she chose? Cooking? The storm howled louder, pushing her hair across her face. She didn't flinch. She didn't beg for shelter or scream for help. She only held the pan tighter, like it was the only thing keeping her alive. Daniel felt a wave of suspicion. Was this some trick? A thief pretending to be weak? A spy sent by raiders? He had survived this long because he trusted no one. Still, something about her eyes made him pause. There was no threat in them, only hunger and exhaustion. "Who are you?" Daniel asked. His voice was hard, rough from years of silence. She shook her head slowly. "No name." Her words came halting, like each one cost effort. "Only cook." Daniel almost laughed, but he didn't. His mind kept warning him, danger, trap, risk. Yet his heart whispered something else. "She is alone, like you. She has nothing." The wind slammed against the bunker, rattling the door. Daniel hesitated, then pulled it open, wider. The storm burst inside, bringing rain and dust. She stepped forward quickly, as if afraid he might change his mind, and crossed the threshold. The door shut behind her. For the first time, Daniel saw her clearly. Her clothes were little more than rags, once fine but now shredded. Her hands shook from the cold, but her grip on the pan never loosened. Strange marks ran along her arm scars, maybe, or symbols burned into her skin. Her eyes kept darting to the fire, the only warmth in the room. Daniel stood by the door, still ready with his knife. "Why here?" he asked. She looked at the fire again, then at him. "Storm," she whispered. "Hunt me. Hide." Those words struck Daniel like ice. Someone was hunting her? That meant trouble was close. Raiders? Soldiers? Something worse? His instinct screamed to throw her back outside, lock the door, and pretend none of this happened. But another part of him, the part that remembered the long, lonely nights, the silence of eating alone, kept him still. "You said you cook," he muttered at last. Her eyes brightened, just a little. She nodded once. "Yes, cook." She crouched near the fire, carefully placing her pan on the stones. From a small pouch at her waist, she pulled out herbs and dried roots, alien plants Daniel had never seen. The scent rose quickly, sharp but strangely comforting. She moved with slow, practiced hands, like she had done this countless times before. Daniel didn't know why, but he didn't stop her. He simply watched. The storm outside roared on. Inside the bunker, the fire hissed as new flavors filled the air. For the first time in years, Daniel felt something different. Not fear, not anger. Something he couldn't name yet. The alien woman sat quietly, her eyes on the flames, her lips pressed shut. She didn't ask for water, food, or shelter. She only cooked, and Daniel, standing with his knife still in hand, realized this stormy night was no longer ordinary. Something had changed. Something had entered his life, carrying a pan and a promise. The silent stranger had arrived. The storm still raged outside, slamming against the bunker walls, but inside the silence felt heavier than the wind. Daniel stood with his back against the door, eyes fixed on the strange woman sitting by the fire. She hadn't spoken another word. She only stared into the flames, her pan resting on the stones as if it belonged there more than she did. Daniel's stomach growled. He hadn't eaten anything but dried rations for days. The scent rising from her mixture teased him smoky. Sharp, almost sweet. But he didn't move closer. He couldn't. Trusting her might mean death. "Why are you really here?" he asked finally. His voice was hard, testing her. She lifted her eyes slowly. They were wide, unblinking, glowing faintly in the firelight. She hesitated, then whispered again, "Storm, hunt me." Daniel frowned. That was the same answer she gave before, short, broken. He didn't know if she was hiding something, or if she truly could not explain more. Still, the smell of food wrapped around him like a net. His memories stirred dinners back on Earth. The warm kitchen where his mother once cooked. He hadn't thought of that in years. Against his better judgment, Daniel stepped closer. The alien woman lowered her head quickly, almost like a frightened animal. But her hand stayed steady as she stirred the pan. She reached into her pouch again, adding another root. Sparks of color leapt into the fire, turning the flames green for a moment. Daniel froze. "What did you just do?" She didn't answer. At once, then softly, "Spice. Spice that turns fire green?" Daniel muttered. His grip on the knife tightened again. She looked at him, her face unreadable, then whispered, "Safe, for food, not for fight." Something in her tone felt honest, careful, almost pleading. Daniel's instincts warred inside him. He could throw her out now, keep himself safe. Or he could take the risk. Finally, he sighed and set the knife on the table. "Fine," he said, voice low. "Let's see what you can do." He gestured toward the table in the center of the room, a rough piece of metal with 2 chairs. The words felt heavy, almost strange in his mouth. "Come, cook here." For the first time, her eyes widened. Surprise flickered across her face. Slowly, she stood, clutching the pan as if it were treasure. She crossed the room, silent as shadow, and placed it carefully on the table. Daniel pulled one of the chairs back and sat down, watching her every move. She remained standing, too cautious to sit, and poured the sizzling mixture into a small metal bowl. The smell grew stronger, filling the bunker, drowning even the scent of smoke and damp clothes. Daniel leaned forward, sniffing. "What is it?" Her lips parted. She searched for words, then answered, "Stew. My world's stew." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "And what's in it?" She hesitated again. "Herb, root, safe." Daniel gave a short laugh, though it had no humor. "Safe. That's what you keep saying." He dipped his spoon into the bowl. The liquid shimmered strangely, but his hunger was stronger than his doubt. He tasted it. The flavor hit him hard. Warm, rich, layered in ways he couldn't explain. It was unlike anything he'd eaten before. For a moment, his suspicion melted away. For a moment, he forgot the storm, the loneliness, the danger. The woman watched him closely, eyes wide with hope or maybe fear. Daniel swallowed and set the spoon down. "Not bad," he admitted. Something like a smile touched her lips. Not wide, not full, but the first trace of expression he had seen on her face. "More," she whispered, almost eagerly. She ladled another portion, placing it before him with both hands, careful and respectful. Daniel ate again, slower this time, studying her as he chewed. Who was she really? Why would someone who could cook like this be wandering alone in the storm hunted? As if reading his thoughts, she finally spoke again. Her voice was low, nearly drowned by the storm outside. "No home, no family, only cook." Daniel's spoon stopped halfway. The simplicity of her words carried weight heavier than a full story. No home, no family. He knew that pain. The storm slammed the door again, making both of them jump. For a moment, Daniel thought he heard something else, voices carried on the wind. But when he listened harder, only the storm remained. Still, unease crawled into his chest. If someone was truly hunting her, then keeping her here meant danger for both of them. He looked at her one more time. She stood by the fire now, silent, her face hidden in the glow. She seemed small, fragile. But Daniel had learned long ago that appearances meant nothing in this world. "Listen," he said firmly, breaking the silence. "You can stay here tonight, one night. But if trouble comes..." He let the sentence hang, heavy and cold. She nodded once, her eyes lowering. "Understand." For a long time neither spoke. The only sound was the storm, the crackle of fire, and the soft bubbling of alien stew. Daniel leaned back in his chair, staring at her. She was a stranger. She was a risk. But tonight, in the middle of the storm, she was also the first sign of life he had allowed into his home in years. And though he didn't say it, something deep inside him had already decided. This was no ordinary guest. This was the beginning of something far bigger. The kitchen, once only his, had just become theirs. The storm finally began to fade. The pounding of the wind grew weaker, replaced by the softer sound of dripping water sliding down the walls. But inside the bunker, tension still lingered. Daniel sat at the table, staring at the empty bowl before him. He hadn't eaten like that in years. The taste still clung to his tongue, warm, rich, alive. It was almost enough to make him forget where he was, what dangers lurked outside. Almost. The alien woman sat across from him now, silent as ever. Her hands rested on the metal pan, fingers curled tightly around its handle, as if letting go would mean losing the last piece of herself. She hadn't touched the food. She hadn't taken a single bite. "You're not eating," Daniel said finally, his voice low. She lifted her eyes. "Not for me," Daniel frowned. "Then who is it for?" Her gaze drifted to the fire. "For a long time," she said nothing. Daniel felt the air grow heavier with every second. Finally, in a whisper almost too quiet to hear, she replied, "For those who gone, for memory." The words hit him like a stone. He opened his mouth, then shut it. He understood more than he wanted to admit. Eating alone had never filled the emptiness in his chest. Maybe for her, food was not about survival. Maybe it was about remembering what had been lost. Daniel leaned back in his chair. He studied her in the glow of the flames. Her face was young, but her eyes carried an old sadness. The kind of sadness he knew too well. "Who hunts you?" he asked. Her fingers tightened around the pan. For the first time, Daniel saw fear flash in her eyes. She shook her head quickly. "Danger, not say." "That's not good enough," Daniel pressed. His voice grew sharper. "If you brought enemies here, I need to know." She met his stare, and for a moment, Daniel thought she would finally answer. But instead, she whispered something different, something stranger. "Cook his truth." Daniel blinked. "What?" Her hand trembled slightly as she reached for her pouch. She pulled out another herb, thin and silver, glowing faintly in the dark. She dropped it into the fire. The flame shifted again, turning blue this time, casting shadows across the bunker walls. "Food tells story," she said softly. "Food shows heart. You eat, you know." Daniel stared at the blue flames, then at her. He had no idea what she meant, but there was a conviction in her words that unsettled him. She poured another small portion of stew into a bowl and slid it toward him. Her eyes locked onto his. "Eat, you see." Daniel hesitated. Every instinct told him not to. But curiosity, it gnawed at him harder than caution. Slowly, he lifted the spoon and tasted. The flavor was different this time. Deeper, bitter, but powerful. And with every bite, strange images stirred in his mind. A tall hall filled with light, a long table, heavy with food. Alien voices laughing, shouting, clinking cups. And then silence. The hall burning, the laughter gone. Only smoke and screams. Daniel dropped the spoon, his hand shaking, his chest tightened. He gasped for air, blinking hard. The images faded, but the feeling remained. He stared at her in shock. What was that?" She lowered her head, voice trembling now. "My truth, my past." Daniel's breath came heavy. He understood. Somehow, through her cooking, she had shared her memory with him. The stew wasn't just food. It was a story, her story. "You were." Daniel hesitated, searching for words. "You were a cook, for them." She nodded, eyes glistening. "For house, for people. Then war. All gone." Her voice cracked. "Only me." Daniel sat in silence. He didn't know what to say. He had fought in wars too. He had seen homes destroyed, families torn apart. But never like this, never shared so directly, so painfully, through something as simple as food. The fire popped loudly, making them both flinch. Outside, the storm gave a final growl before dying completely. But Daniel no longer cared about the weather. Something bigger was happening here. "You said they hunt you," he said quietly. "Who are they?" Her lips parted, but no sound came. Her eyes flicked to the door, to the darkness beyond it. Fear shone clear now. She whispered one word only: "Masters." Daniel felt the chill run through him. He didn't know who these masters were, but he could see the terror in her eyes. Whoever they were powerful enough to drive her into the storm, desperate enough to carry only a pan. He leaned forward, his voice low but firm. "If they come here, I'll need to fight. I need to know what I'm facing." Her hands shook. She whispered again, almost breaking. "Please. Not talk, just cook, please." Daniel looked at her for a long moment. His instincts screamed at him to push harder, demand answers, force the truth. But another part of him, the part that had seen her pain, tasted her memory, knew she couldn't give more. "Not yet." He sighed heavily, rubbing his temples. "Fine. But if trouble comes, I'll regret letting you in." She nodded quickly, relief flickering across her face. She pulled the pan closer, clutching it like a shield. Daniel sat back in his chair, eyes still locked on her. The stew's taste lingered in his mouth, but it was no longer just flavor. It was sorrow. It was fire. It was loss. And he realized with unease that her secrets were no longer hers alone. He had tasted them. He carried them now, the storm had passed outside. But inside the bunker, a different storm had just begun. The night was heavy and dark. The storm had passed, leaving only silence and the soft drip of water outside. For the first time in hours, Daniel thought he might sleep. But sleep never came easy. Not for him. He sat in his chair, staring at the fire's dying glow. Across the room, the alien woman lay curled on the floor, close to the warmth. Her pan rested near her hands, as if she could never let it out of reach. Her breathing was shallow but steady, almost childlike. Daniel rubbed his eyes. He told himself he would close them only for a moment. Just a moment. That was when he heard. Not the storm, not the drip of water, something else. A sound that didn't belong. Crunch, footsteps. Slow, careful. Outside the bunker. Daniel's eyes snapped open. He froze, listening hard. Another step, then another. Someone was out there. He grabbed his knife and moved quietly to the door. His pulse hammered in his chest. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe just debris shifting in the wind. But deep down he knew. Better. He knew the sound of footsteps too well. The alien woman stirred. Her eyes opened, glowing faintly in the dark. She saw Daniel's face, the knife in his hand, and without a word she whispered, "They found me." Daniel's stomach dropped. His fears were real. Who? He hissed. She shook her head quickly, terror flashing across her face. Masters. The word chilled him. Masters. She had said it before, but now it felt alive, like a curse crawling through the air. Outside, the footsteps stopped. Silence stretched thin, sharp as a blade. Then came a new sound, metal scraping against metal. Someone testing the bunker's door. Daniel cursed under his breath. He turned back to the woman. "You brought them here." Her eyes filled with pain, but she didn't deny it. She whispered again, her voice trembling. "I run. They follow." The scraping grew louder. A heavy clang shook the door. Whoever was out there, they weren't just passing by. They wanted in. Daniel's instinct screamed at him to act. He moved fast, pulling a thick bar across the door. The metal groaned under another strike. His shelter wouldn't hold forever. Woman crawled closer to the fire, clutching her pan. Her hands shook so hard the metal clinked. Yet her eyes burned with something fierce, something desperate. "They not stop," she whispered. "If door break, we die." Daniel's grip on his knife tightened. He wasn't ready for this. He wasn't ready for any of this. But survival had never asked permission. "Stay down," he ordered. Another strike slammed against the door, harder this time. Dust rained from the ceiling. Daniel braced himself. Whoever the masters were, they were strong. The woman's voice broke through. The noise, soft but urgent. "I help." Daniel turned, almost shouting. "Help? How? With a pan?" She met his glare, and for the first time, her words carried fire. Yes. Pan. Fire. Food. Smoke. She pointed to the herbs in her pouch. Not only stew, trick, blind, burn. Daniel blinked. His chest rose and fell with heavy breaths. Could she be serious? Could food become a weapon? Another crash shook the bunker. The door bent inward slightly. They didn't have time to argue. "Do it," Daniel growled. Her hands moved fast, quicker than he expected. She grabbed handfuls of herbs, crushed them, and threw them into the fire. At once, the flames hissed and exploded into a thick green smoke. The bunker filled with a sharp, stinging scent that made Daniel's eyes water. The woman covered her mouth with a rag. She shoved another to Daniel. "Breathe here." The door burst open. Metal screeched, snapping off its hinges. Shadows filled the entry. Daniel saw them, tall figures, armored, their faces hidden behind dark masks. Their movements were precise, controlled. Hunters, soldiers, masters. The green smoke rushed at them, carried by the heat of the fire. They staggered. Their movements slowed, confused. One dropped his weapon, coughing violently. Another slammed into the wall, blinded. Daniel didn't wait. He lunged forward with his knife, striking one in the leg. The soldier roared, collapsing. The woman moved beside him, her pan in hand, slamming it hard against another's mask. The metal rang loud, disorienting the invader. She struck again, faster, harder, with surprising strength. The bunker turned into chaos, smoke, fire, clashing steel. Daniel fought with raw survival, slashing and shoving. She fought with desperation, using anything she had. Finally, the shadows pulled back. Stumbling, choking, they retreated into the night. The green smoke clung to them, marking their escape. Then silence. Daniel leaned against the wall, his chest heaving. His knife dripped with blood. His eyes burned from the smoke. The woman knelt by the fire, her hands trembling, clutching the pan. She looked at Daniel through the haze, her voice soft but steady. "See? Cook his fight." Daniel stared at her, stunned. He had thought she was only a burden, a stranger bringing danger. But tonight, she had stood beside him. She had turned her strange cooking into a weapon. Still, fear gnawed at his gut. The masters had found them once. They would return. And now Daniel knew one thing with certainty. His life was no longer just his own. The bunker reeked of smoke. The fire had dimmed to red embers, and Daniel's lungs burned with every breath. Outside, the night was silent again, but silence was never safety. Not anymore. Daniel wiped the blood from his knife and turned to the alien woman. She was kneeling by the fire, still clutching her pan like a holy relic. Her face glistened with sweat, her chest heaving from exhaustion. She looked fragile. She looked breakable. And yet, she had just helped drive armored hunters from his door. Daniel didn't know whether to thank her or throw her out. He took a step closer, his voice sharp. "What did you just drag into my home?" Her eyes lifted, glowing faintly in the dark. "Masters," she whispered, as if the word itself could bite her tongue. Daniel slammed his hand against the wall. "That's not enough. Who are they? Why do they want you?" She flinched but held his stare. "Because I leave. Because I not obey." The words hung in the air. Daniel's mind twisted. Obey. Masters. The pieces came together too slowly, but the picture was ugly. "You were theirs," he said coldly. Her lips trembled. She nodded once. "Cook for them. Feed them. Heal them. Kill them." Daniel froze. "Kill them?" Her voice cracked. "Food. Poison. When they order, I cook. Death." The room felt colder. Daniel's stomach churned as if the stew he had eaten hours ago had turned to stone. This woman wasn't only a survivor, she was a weapon. A servant of monsters. A servant who had once obeyed, and now she was sitting in his home. Daniel stepped back, his knife still in hand. His instincts screamed, "She's dangerous. More dangerous than the storm. More dangerous than the hunters." The woman saw his fear. Her hands tightened around the pan. "Not by choice," she whispered, almost pleading. "They use me. If I say no, I die. So I cook, always cook. Until I run." Her voice shook, but her eyes didn't. They stared into his full of pain. Full of truth, or maybe a lie too perfect to untangle. Daniel turned away, pacing the room. His fists clenched. He had trusted no one for years, and now, in one night, this stranger had changed everything. She had brought danger to his door. But she had also saved his life. The weight of the choice pressed down on him. Could he trust her? Or was he already poisoned by her secrets? The fire popped, breaking the silence. Then Daniel heard it, another sound. From outside. Faint, distant, but real. A low hum. Engines. He froze. The woman's face drained of color. She whispered, "More come." Daniel cursed under his breath. The hunters hadn't given up. They were regrouping. This wasn't over. He turned to her sharply. "Why didn't they just kill you in the storm? Why chase you this far?" Her reply was instant. "Because I know too much. Recipes, secrets, ways to fight. They fear me." Daniel's jaw tightened. That made her valuable. And dangerous. If the masters wanted her this badly, then keeping her here painted a target on his chest. He took a step closer, voice low and cutting. "Then tell me the truth, right now. If you're so valuable, why shouldn't I throw you outside and let them take you?" Her eyes glistened. For a moment, she looked like she might break. But then she stood, slowly, firmly, gripping the pan with both hands. She spoke, her voice no longer a whisper but sharp as steel. "Because you already eat my truth, you know my pain, you know my loss, and because I fight with you now, not them." Daniel stared at her. The firelight flickered across her scarred arms, across the determination etched into her face. She wasn't begging. She wasn't lying on the floor. She was standing, ready. And Daniel felt the storm shift inside him. He remembered the taste of her memories, the fire, the screams. He remembered the smoke that had blinded their enemies. She was dangerous, yes. But maybe, just maybe, she was dangerous to the right people. The hum outside grew louder. The hunters were close. Daniel exhaled slowly. His decision was made, though it tore at him. He tossed her a ragged piece of cloth from the table. "Wrap your face." Smoke trick again. Her eyes widened. Then she nodded quickly, clutching the cloth. Daniel turned to the fire, throwing another log on it, watching the flames rise. His voice was low but steady. "If we're going to survive this, I need more than stew. I need weapons. And you're going to show me how to cook them." The alien woman lowered her head once in silent agreement. She bent over her pouch, pulling out herbs that glowed faintly in the firelight. Her hands moved fast, practiced, confident. Daniel tightened his grip on his knife, listening to the engines outside. Trust was a thin rope, ready to snap. But for now, he had no choice. For now, he would fight with the cook. And he prayed the masters would choke on what she served next. The hum outside grew softer, fading into the night. Maybe the hunters had pulled back to regroup. Maybe they were waiting. Either way, Daniel knew it was not over. He had fought enough battles to recognize a pause before the next strike. Inside the bunker, the alien woman worked quickly by the fire. Her scarred fingers crushed herbs, her glowing eyes fixed on the mixture in her pan. The scents filling the room were sharp and strange, sweet one moment, bitter the next. Daniel watched from the corner, knife still in hand, his body tense. She didn't speak until the mixture began to thicken, glowing faintly blue under the firelight. Then, without lifting her gaze, she said softly, "You ask for weapon. I give." Daniel stepped closer, suspicious. "That's food." Her lips curved. In the faintest shadow of a smile, "Not only food. Recipe of survival." She lifted the pan carefully, poured a small portion into a cracked metal cup, and set it on the table. The liquid shimmered, steam curling upward. "What does it do?" Daniel asked. "Drink," she said simply. Daniel narrowed his eyes. "You." First, she didn't hesitate. She dipped her finger into the steaming liquid and touched it to her tongue. Her body shivered once, but she didn't collapse, didn't choke. She only nodded at the cup. Daniel hesitated. He remembered the stew from before, the way it had dragged memories into his mind. But he also remembered how her smoke had blinded the hunters. Against reason, against caution, he lifted the cup and sipped. The taste was sharp, burning his throat like fire. His chest tightened, and then suddenly he felt stronger. His arms no longer ached from the fight. His lungs no longer stung from the smoke. His body felt awake. "What the hell?" he muttered, setting the cup down. She finally looked at him. "Heal, strength. Recipe I learn when I serve." Daniel stared at her in disbelief. She wasn't lying. Whatever she had given him was real. It was medicine, but medicine disguised as food. Her voice dropped lower, almost trembling. "Masters used me. I make food to heal their soldiers. I make food to kill enemies. They teach, they force. Now I use for me, for you." Daniel leaned against the table, his thoughts racing. In all his years, he had never seen anything like this. Food as weapon. Food as healing. It was madness and yet it worked. Why tell me now? He asked, his voice rough. She lowered her head. Because if you trust nothing, we die. If you trust a little, maybe, we live. The simplicity of her words struck him harder than any weapon. Trust a little. Daniel had spent years trusting no one, living alone, building walls so thick even memories couldn't climb them. But now in one night, that wall was cracking. The fire snapped loudly, pulling him back. He stared at her. Her hand shook as she crushed another herb. She was exhausted, terrified. Yet she kept working, determined. Daniel exhaled slowly. What else can you make? Her eyes flicked up to his, a small light of pride breaking through her fear. Smoke that blinds. Oil that burns. Spice that makes strong. Stew that shows. Truth, Daniel nodded slowly. It was insane, but it was also hope. Before he could speak again, a sound broke the silence. A low whistle from outside, then another, not the storm. Not the wind. A signal. The hunters. The woman froze, her fingers tightening around the pan. Her lips trembled as she whispered, "They come again." Daniel's blood ran cold. He moved to the door, listening. The signals were closer this time. Surrounding them, he turned back to her. "We'll need more than smoke." Her hands moved faster now, mixing powders, pouring liquid into small containers, wrapping herbs in cloth. She laid them out on the table like weapons, each one different in color and smell. Daniel picked one up, a pouch filled with dark powder. "What's this?" she whispered. "Throw in fire. Flame will roar. Scare, burn." Daniel smirked despite himself. "A firebomb." She nodded once. Yes, but with taste. For the first time in years, Daniel felt something stir in his chest. Not just fear. Not just survival. A spark of possibility. The hunters thought they were coming for easy prey. They thought the bunker held only a lone human and a frightened cook. But tonight, the kitchen would become a battlefield. Daniel tightened his grip on his knife, the strange strength from her drink still burning in his veins. He looked at her, at the scars, at the glowing eyes that no longer seemed so weak. "You're not just a cook," he said. She met his stare, her voice steady. "I am weapon, but I choose to fight with you." Daniel gave a short nod. "Then, let's give your masters a taste of their own recipe." Outside, the whistles grew louder. Shadows gathered once more. Inside, the fire roared to life, flames dancing across the strange herbs and oils. The bunker no longer smelled like home. It smelled like war. And Daniel realized something he never thought he would. He wasn't facing this fight alone. The night outside was no longer silent. The hunters moved like wolves, circling prey. Their whistles cut through the dark, followed by the crunch of boots on wet earth. Daniel could hear them spread out, surrounding the bunker. Inside, the air was thick with smoke and spice. The alien woman worked the fire like a soldier readying weapons, not a cook preparing dinner. Her hands never stopped crushing herbs, pouring oil, mixing powders into small pouches. Each one smelled strange, dangerous, alive. Daniel strapped his knife to his belt. His body still burned with the strength her drink had given him. But even with that, he knew the odds. Too many of them. Too few of him. "We can't win this fight head on," he muttered. She glanced at him, her glowing eyes sharp. "Not fight head on. Fight smart. Kitchen fight." Daniel almost laughed, though there was no humor in it. "A kitchen fight. Right." The door rattled. A deep voice boomed through the metal. "Give her up, human, and you live. Keep her, and you die." Daniel's jaw tightened. He didn't look at her, but he felt her eyes on him. He could throw her out right now, end this nightmare, and go back to his lonely life. But the thought made his stomach twist. He remembered the stew, the memories, the truth she had shared. She wasn't just a stranger anymore. No deal. Daniel growled back. The hunters laughed. a cold, sharp sound. Then silence again, the kind that always came before the storm. The woman pulled out one final pouch, the largest of them all. The powder inside shimmered like crushed stars. She pressed it into Daniel's hands. "Throw in fire when I say not before." Daniel nodded. He didn't understand it, but he trusted her now more than he trusted his own instincts. The door exploded inward. Metal shrieked, sparks flying. The hunters stormed in, armored and armed, their masks glowing red in the firelight. Daniel lunged forward, slamming one of her smaller pouches into the fire. The flames roared, shooting sparks and smoke across the room. The hunters staggered, their visors fogging with steam. "Now!" she shouted, slamming her pan against the floor. The sound echoed like a bell, disorienting the intruders. Daniel threw another pouch, this one bursting into thick yellow smoke, the bunker filled with choking clouds. The hunters coughed, stumbled, swung blindly. The woman moved through the haze, like a shadow, striking with her pan, her movements sharp and fast. She wasn't fragile anymore. She was fire, fury, survival. Daniel cut down one hunter, then another, his knife flashing in the smoky light. Every strike was fueled by the strange strength still burning in his blood, but more kept coming. Too many. The woman's voice rang out above the chaos. "Now, Daniel, the last one." Daniel didn't hesitate. He hurled the shimmering pouch into the fire. The flames erupted, not just a roar and explosion. A blinding flash of white light filled the bunker, followed by a wave of heat and sound. Hunters screamed as fire consumed their armor, as smoke blinded their eyes, as the kitchen itself became a storm of fury. Daniel shielded his face, the blast knocking him back against the wall. His ears rang, his vision blurred. When the smoke finally cleared, silence fell once more. The hunters were gone. Some had fled, leaving weapons behind. Others lay broken on the ground, their bodies twisted in the fire's glow. The bunker was scarred, its walls blackened, but it still stood. Daniel pushed himself to his feet, coughing hard. His ears buzzed, but he could hear the soft sound of breathing. He turned and saw her, the alien woman, still standing by the fire, pan in hand, eyes glowing faintly through the haze. She looked at him, her face streaked with ash and sweat. Her voice was barely more than a whisper. "Final feast. For them." Daniel stared at her, chest heaving, knife still dripping with blood. He felt the truth of her words. Tonight had been a feast, not of food, but of fire, smoke, and death. Slowly, he stepped closer. "It's over," he said. Her eyes lowered. "For now." Daniel knew she was right. The masters would not stop. They would come again. But something had changed tonight. Something inside him. He reached for the pan in her trembling hands and pushed it gently back toward her. "Keep it. It's more than a pan now. It's our weapon." Her lips parted, but no words came. Instead, her eyes softened, the fear fading for the first time. Daniel looked around the ruined kitchen. The place that had once been only his was now theirs. And though the fight was not finished, one thing was certain: he was no longer alone. Alien woman had whispered once, "I don't talk much human, but I can cook." Now Daniel knew the truth. She could do far more than cook. She could survive. She could fight. And together, they could stand against the masters. The final feast was done, but their story had only just begun.